My name is Sophia, and today I'm going to tell you why what happened at the Capitol building on January 6th, 2021 was not an attempted coup d'etat, and that in fact was a riot. I will begin by sharing my experience on January 6th, 2021. On this day, I wasn't doing much of anything when I suddenly received a series of text messages from one of my closest friends. One of them read, so apparently there was a coup d'etat. A what? Her text caught me by surprise, completely, seeing as only 20 minutes prior we were sharing our weird home screen photos. Not to mention, I was completely unfamiliar with the term coup d'etat. I had no idea what it meant or how to pronounce it. After doing a quick Google search, I rested upon the answer I sought. The definition of coup d'etat: a sudden, violent, and illegal seizure of power from a government. Curious, I searched coup d'etat in Capitol building. My eyes were immediately met with frantic headlines that screamed panic. Attempted coup at Capitol building. Donald Trump attempts coup. Violent Trump supporters at Capitol building. Clearly, there was something big happening at the Capitol. But was it really an attempted coup, as it's being claimed to be? I looked more into this, and I noticed a very important thing when watching raw, unedited footage of the Capitol. You'll notice the same thing I did, if you watch it as well. In the beginning, for quite a few hours, large numbers of people gathered in a peaceful rally. One very important thing to look at is these people did not look angry or insane. They were doing what any group of people do when they want their voices to be heard: peacefully protest. Then there comes a point where a small percentage of people, compared to the crowd behind them, start to become violent, and they push on the barricades while attacking security. Then more people join in, but it was not everyone. Compared to how many people went to the Capitol to peacefully protest, only a small portion of them actually made it inside. I've noticed that the news media continually sells this narrative that every single protester who went to the Capitol building were off their rockers, and as soon as they got there, all of the protesters began to violently force their way into the Capitol building and destroy everything in their path. And the most astounding part of this is people actually believe this false narrative. It seems we're at a point where people can't think for themselves, and they believe everything they are told without doing research. How do we get to this point? People repeat what the media says as if they're parrots. It's mind-boggling, and I really hope people understand after my speech why I am telling you what happened at the Capitol building was not a coup d'etat. It was a riot. Here is an example of a highly successful coup d'etat that occurred in France, accomplished by Napoleon Bonaparte. In October 1799, Napoleon began to make a plan to take over the 5-member French Directory. He gained the support of 2 out of the 5 members and other high-level co-conspirators, in hopes that the legislators would put him in charge. He used propaganda, intimidation, and bribery during a legislative meeting on November 10th, 1799. They were not convinced, and they chased him from the chambers while chanting, "Down with the dictator." Napoleon, however, convinced troops to clear the area, and with a small hand-picked group of legislators, had them abolish the directory and create a 3-member consulate in which he took position of first consul, giving him the power to later crown himself Emperor of France in 1804. Let's revisit the definition of coup d'etat. A sudden, violent, and illegal seizure of power from a government. The U.S. government is not the Capitol building. The U.S. government is made up of many people. If these protesters really wanted to overthrow our government, that was the worst, most horribly planned attempt at a coup d'etat I've ever heard of. The small percentage of people who entered the Capitol building entered unarmed and only destroyed property. That's it. If it had been an attempted coup, you wouldn't have a bunch of dummies breaking into a Capitol building and destroying things. You would have seen armed civilians and most likely the military with a plan to remove every single person in government from power all at once. It would be an actual attack. There would be bloodshed, there would be violence, and terror. They would not have stopped in front of the Capitol building, peacefully protesting for hours before a small group at the front of the protest started to get violent. The definition of riot is a violent disturbance of peace by a crowd. That is exactly what happened. It was a violent disturbance of peace by a crowd that resulted in the destruction of property. It's really not that far off from several BLM riots in which buildings, among which federal buildings and property, were burned and destroyed. The next time you hear someone call the Capitol building riot an attempted coup d'etat, please tell them what a coup d'etat is and how people breaking into government property and destroying things is not an attempt to overthrow the government. Thank you.